Vim and Vibe provides a fresh perspective for leadership development. They are the creative force behind the production of micro short films designed exclusively for corporate training, disrupting traditional models of training and disrupting the way we've modularized access to instructional design assets. Vim and Vibe offers remarkable differentiators for companies, instructional designers, facilitators, and content distributors who choose to work with them. Their diverse team is striving to create high-quality storylines and episodes that utilize the best filmmaking techniques to create engaging, effective training so that learners feel inspired to think and behave differently. Learn more at www.vimandvibe.com. Welcome to ATD's Talent Development Leader podcast, featuring monthly conversations with the greatest influencers in the talent development field. We cover the latest trends, hot topics, and future-focused ideas that current and aspiring TD leaders need to know. Learn more by visiting www.td.org and searching for Talent Development Leader podcast. Jenny Krengel is the founder and CEO of Vim and Vibe Productions, specializing in human-centered microlearning with high-quality, short-form videos as the centerpiece. A certified professional coach with a BA in psychology from the University of Texas at Dallas, coupled with over 25 years as a high-tech enterprise sales professional and leader, Jenny is well-versed in motivation and creating learning scenarios that connect with global audiences. Hi, Jenny. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Anne. Thank you for having me.
So, micro short films, you have disrupted the traditional models of training. I feel like I have a front row seat to what makes your services so special because I've had the chance to browse your website and view sample content. And for me, what felt different and what was compelling is that I was entertained, I was intrigued, I wanted to watch and see how the video series I was watching ended. And I've been through plenty of regulated trainings where that is just not the case. So I'd love to hear from you as its founder and source of creative vision. What makes Vim and Vibe microlearning stand out?
Well, first of all, I'm grinning ear to ear. I'm so happy. My heart is full. I literally almost am in tears hearing you say that because that really makes me just thrilled that you had that experience. We really there's really four main differentiators in what we do. And first of all, let me back up just a little bit. When late in my career, so we're talking 5 years ago, my husband asked me the existential question of, if something happened to me, would you still be doing what you're doing? And I said, I'll use the clean word, not only no, heck no, right? And he says, well, what would that be? And I said, well, I would go to film school. And I've had this lifelong fascination with human behavior, one, what motivates people, two, but from early days of Adobe Acrobat and Photoshop and video editing. And I've always done training and development my whole career in some form or fashion. So at this point, everything is kind of coming together. So he said, well, then why don't you go ahead and do that? Go to film school. So I did. And one of the key takeaways that I took from that experience was write the film you want to see. So what we're doing is we are making the training we want to take. Yes. So in fact, I wore that t-shirt to the ATD conference and I got multiple comments on the shirt, make the training you want to take. And so it sounds simple. It's not easy. However, it is simple in some ways. So for us, our grounding roots are really in kind of four key differentiators. One being human to human experiences. And so much talk about AI. We love AI. I get it. It's here. It's to dig your heels into that, I think is a mistake in business, especially. So we do love AI. However, I think there are certain models that are perfectly appropriate to use AI training. But when you're trying to teach leaders how to have compassion, how to be a good listener, how to have cultural competence, how to have some of these skills, I think it's best that comes from another human being. So one, human to human. Secondly, we use emotional hooks. And by emotional hooks, I mean things like music. So my first love was dance. I've always had this choreographic mind, right? Pulling together really complex either solutions or complex situations and kind of bringing them together to make this orchestra beautiful. And so music sometimes actually drives some of my writing in the content that we're creating. So music, humor, really digging at people's heartstrings and bringing a range of emotions, whether it be laughter or stress or even sadness. The third kind of key differentiator is the short bursts, right? So each one of our episodes is less than 5 minutes. So you aren't sitting there listening to a talking head or, which that can be very effective too in the right scenario. But for us, that's not the training that I want to take. Mm-hmm. So these short bursts. And then the last piece that we really feel like is a great differentiator for us and is that we are actually fun to work with. And we want to have fun. That's really a core value. I don't take things too seriously. Just life is too short for that. And so I just look for humor in all things and to let people have fun and creating is just the most really important core value that I personally have.
And you love what you do.
Love it.
You took that reflection moment to say, no, actually, I don't want to do this right now. And I want to do this instead. And of course, you've stepped into that fully, which is really wonderful to see.
Well, thank you. And it's pulling together, I think, all of my background elements, everything that got me to this day, all of the skills that I've built over time. I had never made a film before my first short film. And I'm not going to discount the complexities of it. It's a quite complex project, but at the end of the day, it is project management. Mm-hmm. And I've project managed hundreds, if not thousands of projects over my lifetime, whether it's rebuilding, remodeling a home, building a home, a software deployment, so many projects. And so if you have a good concept of budgets, managing budgets, understanding people and processes, then I say that anybody can do this.
Well, I understand that learning organizations, regardless of size, industry, so forth, often grapple with many of the same challenges, right? Building trust in leadership, for example. And I'm sure you encounter many of the same skills gaps and learning needs from company to company. So I'm curious, do you find in working with different companies, there are certain gaps that your training best fills or training needs that you would recommend for folks based on the kind of the pillars of what you discussed and how you are differentiated and stand out? So for example, soft skills, would that be kind of a prime training need that you could see your short films filling?
Absolutely. And that's really where, again, I think if you want to go learn how to do an Excel spreadsheet, I would personally go do that. I'd go find a YouTube video and do a step-by-step. So we're not a step-by-step. And one of the key tenets to our design is, it was really important to us is, the saying, when the teacher's ready, when the student's ready, the teacher will come. We obviously have outcomes and objectives in our training modules. You have to. That's just the model of L&D, and you can't dismiss that. However, when these courses or these episodes are done in a facilitated or instructor-led live or instructor virtual, we want people to get out of it what they need to get out of it. Mm. And the fascinating thing is when you bring in characters to a story, it makes it very easy for the learners to talk about. So it might be harder for me personally to say, well, me, Jenny, I have this issue with Joe because he's doing X, Y, and Z. That's not going to happen in a classroom especially when you're with your coworkers. When you can point to the screen and say, well, when Sue did X, mm-hmm. or when Monica or when Amir did these things, this is what I saw in it. This is how I would react to it. It really brings in kind of that third person element that makes it super intriguing. So I think I'm kind of going around a little bit here, but yes, definitely soft skills. And what we did is we are really grounded in, so Linda Glass, who's our chief learning officer and really head of our instructional design, when we work together to structure the learning outcomes and what's going to be taught, she's also a certified coach. And then the other gentleman on our team, who's my assistant director and just all things production, who's amazing. We had a meeting, really early on, saying if we're going to be grounded in the content that we're going to teach, we asked ourselves the question, what has moved us to behavior change? What insights have we had that have moved us to behave differently? And we really came to 4 key practice areas that really drive our content strategy. And those are strengthening my beliefs, strengthening my character, strengthening my resilience, and strengthening my relationships. And so within those, then we ask the question, or we say, okay, I'm learning how to. So for example, if I say I'm on my beliefs, if I'm strengthening my beliefs, I'm going to learn how to identify and challenge those beliefs. I'm going to learn how to shift my mindset. I'm going to build my self-esteem. I'm going to recognize my biases. So that's just an example of how those practice areas drive everything that we're developing.
And curious, do you develop content purely custom for an organization? Is there anything that you have, off the shelf, for lack of a better, phrase, where really you find it applies to many organizations and some of the skills gaps they need to fill?
Well, that's really was the heart at our series, a lot like Mike. That was really the heart at it. It was driven by our relationship with Dell Technologies. And the woman there, Ramona Aurora, who was the chief learning officer, she's now over at Disney, but she really, we were doing custom work for Dell for their leadership development specifically. And I asked her the question one day, what is a topic that is really high in your executive leadership discussions that you're in? And she said, well, psychological safety, and really building trust through the principles of psychological safety. And so I said, well, what if we did this series? She talked about the Netflix bingeable, and I said, well, what if I created this character and we really make some episodes that drive these soft skills around psychological safety? And so what we did is we took a McKinsey report from 2021 that discussed the 5 least addressed skills in training and corporate development around psychological safety. So we took that as our baseline for the content that we developed for that season 1. And the season 1 was so awesome and had these great characters. We're like, okay, we have to keep going with the series. And so, again, asking the question, what are skills that are coming up that are being needed? And so resilience came up. So that's the second piece. And that falls in, we actually have what the practice areas is building, strengthening my resilience. And so that was a perfect fit for us then to go into that next season. And so then we just built off of that. So we are going to continue to develop. We are a small business. And so obviously, as we have to kind of grow as revenue lets us grow, we do have plans to start production at the end of this year, early next, on actually the rights of a Tony-winning Broadway show, which we're not ready to release yet, but it's going to be super awesome and we're super excited about it.
Wow, that is incredible. And I watched the trailer for the series you just referenced. And so I encourage listeners, check it out, vimandvibe.com to see what Jenny's talking about. And you mentioned behavior change earlier. And I think really that's the core of what this is all about, right? And as our listeners know, the purpose of learning is to produce better performance and changed behavior. So the TD field is continually working to shift our focus away from the how of training toward that why of performance and behavior, because this is what CEOs care about. This is what CFOs care about. And I think that's kind of what we need to continue to make the point in all that we do. Can you talk about, Jenny, why in your experience it's critical to reinforce the purpose of behavior change with stakeholders?
Well, the simplest answer to that is, if you're going to spend money on training and there's not a behavior change, then what's the point? I mean, and granted, I think it's very difficult. There's no silver bullet to measuring the results of soft skills training. Like, is someone really a better communicator? Well, I don't know. Ask their team, do a self-assessment. There's certain ways that we try in learning and development, we try to measure. But one of the key drivers when we were working initially with Dell on this project was they have they call them the SHIPS program, right? Sponsorship, mentorship, allyship. So in our design, we're like, well, those are measurable outcomes. You can ask someone before, were you a mentor? And after, are you going to be a mentor? Have you sought out a mentor? There's certain things that are measurable. Now, with our focus on production, video production and creating, we are going to be, as we go forward, less attached to the outcomes. That's really going to be the onus is, on the companies, but we design with specific outcomes in mind that are behavioral based and really it's about being a better corporate citizen.
You mentioned Dell. I'd love to hear some other stories if you would share from Vim and Vibe customers who've successfully inspired a new performance and behavior. And any commonalities among them that you can point to as factors that consistently contributed to such success?
Well, I can, one example I can definitely give you is there was a client that had a leadership team meeting that was coming up, and there were some trust issues amongst the team. There were 17 of them. And the VP, the leader who was a VP, said, I think this psychological safety will really help kick off. They were having a 3-day offsite. It was their first offsite since COVID. Mm-hmm. And so we did a half day, dedicated to creating, mindful listening, situational humility, situational awareness, those 5 elements that are in the McKinsey report. And we followed up, a couple of times, but the latest follow-up that we had with him, he said it was an amazing turn in the team and such a bonding way for the team to start off their offsite leadership, each being accountable to each other. They all just learned what situational humility was. They all just learned what mindful listening was. And so if the leader of the team can see it and feel it, then it's basically he was feeling angst and uncomfortable before they had their meeting. And after the meeting, he said the behaviors within the group itself, he could not have been more pleased.
I mean, I think about how hard it is for people to do these soft skills, right? Power skills, as many call them. And I think that's one of the most compelling things about what you do, Jenny, in Vim and Vibe. We all know that film is moving, right? It inspires us. That we watch and we feel like we want to make changes, right? Or become advocates or whatever. So I think that's such a powerful purpose that you all have, and also just a channel by which you can help people learn. And again, that you don't want to stop watching, right? I think that many learners today don't have that connection with their training content or their training experience. And so, yeah, that's pretty powerful.
Well, and another example too, just going back to that in-person experience, because we did create it to be both asynchronous and with instructor-led. And one of the clients that's financial services that is, really, it's a male-dominated industry. It just is, and the data shows that. So I'm not going to dispute that with anybody. But they're financial services, and to have a group of predominantly men and one woman leader, and to have them really be vulnerable and realize kind of our shortcomings, because we're all about self-awareness. Look in that mirror, right? That is, at the end of the day, look there first. And to walk away after that experience, or for them to be saying, we want to roll this out to our teams. We want to do this again. And sure enough, they are now integrating this into their leadership development program because it was so impactful on the participants.
Is there a roadmap or approach you use with your clients that you think would be helpful for listeners to understand and consider for their own microlearning initiatives?
Yeah, I think so. First, we have these core practice areas. I think it's really being anchored to a North Star, if you will, that you can always go back to as, does this align? So I think alignment is number one. Two, you always have to keep an outcome in mind, even though like the caveat for us is that we want people to take away from it what they need to take away from it. But you do obviously have outcomes in mind. Know your audience. I think it's really, when I write for one person in mind. And when you write for one person in mind, you're actually writing for many. It's quite counterintuitive. And so I literally have a person in my head when I'm writing a story or writing any of the stuff that we produce. So I think know your audience when you are creating anything for and in this case too, ours is for leadership, right? Like we learned early on, this is not for frontline workers necessarily. They won't identify with some of the conversations that go on in an offsite leadership team meeting, which is where our season 1 is based, right? And so it's for leaders. So we knew that. I think, create things that are relatable. We are pushing the envelope a little bit with our content in that it's all clean, it's all G-rated, but it does bring some emotions up. It does make people reflect back on some times in their lives that may have not been so great. We have a character named Sue that in season 1 is the wise sage and the mentor. And then in season 3, we take her back to 1999 to show the rocky road that she went through. How did she get to where she is now? And we show some of that character development. So I think it's, and I'm on TikTok. So at Vim and Vibe on TikTok, I'm also on Instagram, but I am starting to break down how we do what we do in kind of video format. And, I build a spreadsheet. Like I have, every character has wants and needs and pains and things that trigger them. And so staying consistent with that character and those personality traits is really important. And then lastly, the other piece of the road is have fun with it. Let people laugh, be corny. I mean, we got one of our season 1, we got feedback, like something was cheesy. That was the word, it was cheesy. And of course, at first I'm annoyed, but then I took a step back. I was like, well, yes, it's cheesy. It was supposed to be cheesy. Like that's the character. It was very in line with how that character would have behaved in this certain situation. And so then I was like, well, that's fine. I think it's cheesy because it was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So have fun with it. That's kind of the last piece of it, and experiment and try. And, I always say I never know what I'm doing. And I always say that life is just an experiment. And so every project that I do, even though I've done elements before, it still is an experiment. So experiment and have fun.
Jenny, I'm excited for listeners to view your content, learn more about you on vimandvibe.com. And I hope that they feel inspired today to try new things for their own microlearning initiatives, right? To, as you said, have fun, take risks. I think there's, as far as you look at the opportunities for how we can better address learners' needs and create behavior change, there's so much there. And so how can our listeners connect with you, ask any of their own questions, or continue the conversation?
Well, the most efficient way, I will say, is probably on Instagram or TikTok, because that's how, if we're in the video and filmmaking and kind of edutainment, if you will. I know some people hate that word, but that's the business that we're in. We're in media. And so that's one way. Second way is email, jk@vimandvibe.com. I'm happy to take emails, and, or LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. So connect with me in any way that you feel most comfortable with, but also requests. Like if I get a request on how do you do this, and I probably will make a little video segment and post it, but that would be through a TikTok or an Instagram or, our YouTube channel. We have like 2 followers. I think it's me and one other person. But anyway, again, it's just, I'm happy to share what we do and how we do it. And in fact, I was asked to write an article for the ATD magazine that's coming out. I think it's not till October, but I've written a couple of blog posts on the ATD website about video production and doing it on a budget, and some tools that we're using in our production process. So I'm an open book.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing your experiences and your insights. And look forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome. And I'm compelled to say arigato because I just got back from Japan and I loved it. And it's trained now in me. So arigato. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this podcast by the Association for Talent Development. If you found this show insightful or useful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague.